Okay, so that all right up until now, we have not made any constrictions. We have not made any constraints for laminar or turbulent flow, right? And if it is turbulent, we actually will refer with these things we're referring to mean properties. We'll actually get to that later. But just for us to now go further, we now have to make some assumption on what this shear force actually is. And that's where we become this Newtonian fluid, right? Newtonian fluids, where we're going to say, right, that the shear force is equal to viscosity times the gradient of the velocity profile. So this is the constraint. This is where the laminar situation is coming in, right? Because in turbulence, they try to come up with some other estimation of what this shear stress behaves like. And the goal is always you want to express, right? You want to insert for shear, you want to insert some function, differential function, but some function of the velocity. If I can express the shear force in terms of the velocity, I can get closer to deriving what my velocity gradients are. So, right, there are a couple models that people have where they make this assumption for the turbulent case where they're trying to guess how shear is related to velocity. And that's an interesting subject all by itself. We don't care about that because we're going to do the simplest one we have, and that's the sorry, should be a negative right there. Right? So we've made our assumption of what the shear is, and that is we're gonna call it, right? Laminar Newtonian fluid. This part, the Newtonian part, represents this, and it also represents the fact that this this is a constant. That would be that says it's the Newtonian fluid. If it were non-Newtonian, you'd have a situation. So let's just say non-Newtonian fluids are when shear, the viscosity is a function of velocity as well, or shear rates. But those are way too hard. That's like PhD stuff, I would say. Actually, I want to go for a PhD in that, but we'll see after this COVID. So, right, just realize the importance of what we did is where we made a force balance talk about shear and radius, but we never got any information about what this velocity profile is. So in this method, it's coming from the fact that you're making this assumption, this model guess assumption on what the shear is. And this is and you can do this with measurements too, which is something that they could do, right? Just realize that what this term is, dr du, right? I have a bunch of velocity lines right here inside the pipe, right? And they're a function of the r, okay? So, right, anytime you have a dr du, right, that is, right, so here is the dr du, right? It's the slope. It already agrees with something that we just showed, right? Right? We said that at the center line there's no shear. So actually, right, think of it this way. So at this center line, this slope is flat, no shear. Most we get is when it's right on the wall. You have to have the most change possible. I mean, it's not totally flat, but this is when, right? That's when the shear is big. So this still agrees with that. It still agrees with this concept right here. We're just talking about it in terms of slopes and differentials. Okay. So now the cool part, right? Again, this is K. I'm actually going to go back into the K, but keep it a pressure gradient, right? Sum all this stuff in. Boom. Boom. Okay. After we sub our shear thing in, you get this equation, right? This is an ODE for U of R. So we've written out now a differential equation that tells us what U of R is. Again, this could be a constant, so it's not a differential term as well, right? So already you could say we won because even if you didn't do it analytically, right, with this methodology, you could numerically plot this and still get what you're searching for. All right, so, right, you want to find U of R, so what you do is you separate and integrate, and I did that in the notes, and you should look that over. But for these, right, we'll just cut the chase. After you're integrating, what do you get? You get this. And then you write it this way. Where this that's the radius of the pipe, but we've written it this way because this is a non-dimensional term, and it works out better. So you have kind of all your dimensions are popped up in front, and then this has no dimensions. You usually want to do that when you get to velocity profiles, just so you can focus on this frontal term. This has all these dimensions. Dimensional analysis even tells us one thing. There's no dimensions right here. This is velocity. Sorry. That means this has to have units of velocity. So that would mean that this is in meters per second. And you can verify that. Oh, one more thing. In the notes, I have an extra credit for this separate and integrate. And the thing we do in the notes is I say, well, to solve for an integration constant, you need to give a boundary condition, and we gave the no slip condition. We said that the velocity at the wall is equal to 0, and that's how I solve for that integration constant. In the extra credit, I want you to do it by saying that the same thing is true if you apply these symmetric conditions. So this is actually true for any R. We call them R naught. Show me that it's true. So right, show me you get the same integration constant if you did it this way, where you have some symmetric function. Make a little integrating exercise. Couple more things. Not done talking about this thing, right? I mean, this thing is so fundamental, right? We write it in diameter, or it's nice to write it in diameters because this right, this is easy to measure diameters of pipes. It's hard to actually get the radius. You can just think of yourself like you can just take one right. You can take your little micrometer here, and then and then the reads right there. It'd be hard for me to zone in my calipers to guesstimate where the center is. So that's why when you get fluids things, it's nice to put in terms of diameters, because whoever then has to calculate these things can just get a quick measurement and put the right number in. This is just this 16 just becomes from a factor that we have diameters equal to R/2. That's some algebra. This viscosity is inversely proportional. And then you really have this term out in front, the dpdx. So that is what drives the flow, we say. If this number is very, very big, then on a whole, the whole velocity profile will be much, much larger. That's a fundamental thing about flows inside a street pipe. Is when we solved it, we realized that this whole thing doesn't matter too much. It's always around 1. The most it could be is 1. But what matters is what was out in front. Diameter is sure that's square, but you can really do things to bump this guy up. So if you want less velocity, less pressure gradient across the pipe. If you want more, bump this thing up. And we'll go study a little bit more about just this total solution.